we did not let our mess stop us from pursuing God. And like John said, the voices of you're not worthy, like I can't tell you how many times we wanted to hide our mess because of shame.
Thank you for joining us for the Blended Kingdom Families podcast. This podcast is for blended families, the people who love them, and anyone who just wants to improve their marriage and family relationships.
BKF exists to break the cycle of divorce, equip marriages, and unite blended families with the truth of God's Word. It is our hope that today you will receive biblical guidance and practical resources that will bring unity and peace to create your thriving, healthy home. Let's jump in.
Hey guys, welcome back to the BKF podcast. We're so excited you're here with us today. If you haven't already, take an opportunity, like, share, comment. We would love to hear your reviews as well, so leave us a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the podcast. If you're listening on Audible, you're awesome. But you also can get the full video format of this podcast on our YouTube channel. You can go and subscribe and be notified every single Monday when we drop a new podcast. Today, we're so excited to have John and Jill Miller in the house with us today.
Hey
Hey guys.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having
so much
us.
for having us.
We're glad to be here.
Well, we're so glad. And what I love about John and Jill is Jill and I actually met through social media. And so, but I love how the Lord does that. Like, there have been several people on our podcast that we've connected through social media, and then you just start like messaging back and forth, and then you create this relationship and friendship.
It's crazy.
So cool. So cool.
It is very cool.
Well, you guys, I want to tell you a little bit about John and Jill Miller. So they live in North Lake, Texas, which is here in the DFW area, right by South Lake where Scott and I live. Y'all, they've been married 18 years. So we have a lot that we can learn from them, okay? They have 4 children together. They are a blended family, y'all. Jill is the owner and founder of Teacher Be Still, which I love your ministry, and Jill, we want you to dive into that and tell us your heart behind it here in a little bit. But their life standard is the Bible, which I love that. I love that you put that on your bio. That is so cool. Yep. But first, before we dive into everything we're going to talk about, just tell us a little bit about you guys, your family, what y'all enjoy doing. Anything that you want to share with the audience?
So we've got an age range. When you said we've got 4 kids, so we've got 24 down to 9.
Wow.
So finding something that everyone likes to do is difficult, down to even TV shows.
Yeah.
We're like, what's the most thing that everybody will like? But we love outdoor stuff. Everybody likes hiking, or our oldest was a rock climber. So anything outside, we love. Colorado's like our second place we love to be. And so anything in the mountains outside, and we found some okay hikes here. I say hikes in Texas.
Kind of like little trails.
Trails.
Yeah.
Like a nice breezy walk, but we love outside stuff.
Only day trips though. We've tried camping with 3 girls. It's not happening.
Yeah.
And it's my fault.
We're not great.
I just get too paranoid when we're trying to go to sleep being only in a tent, I think.
Yeah.
So I've packed up a couple of times, and when we've tried camping.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, I would have to glamp or carry my pistola. You know,
I don't know if we're the outside on the ground sleeper family. I think there's a crew that does that, and if you're one of those people, man, I'm all about
I've
it.
tried to aspire to that, but it just doesn't work out.
Yeah.
It's not in our nature.
I'm with you. So tell us more about kind of how you guys met and kind of tell us your love story. Tell us that story.
We have a unique story. I'm going to let you start.
Yeah, I'll take it for the first part, I guess. So I got married for the first time when I was 17 years old.
Oh, wow.
And that's where our first 2 children came from, was that marriage. And we were together until right before I moved back to Hot Springs. So I had been separated only about 5 months when I met Jill.
Okay.
And as you can imagine, getting married at 17 and only being 22, I was not looking for a relationship at that point, having just come out of a marriage in any way.
Yeah.
And it was amazing when I met her. I remember the first time. She doesn't even remember this, but I do, because we met again, obviously, after that a couple weeks later. But the night I got to Hot Springs, my ex-wife and I had been separated for months already, and I went bowling with a buddy of mine. He said some people from work were coming, and Jill walks in with 2 or 3 other girls, and I remember just seeing her and being floored. I was like, no way, no, because I didn't want to even think about that way, just looking at women just looking at them.
Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't really see her again until a couple weeks later. I went to work at the restaurant that my friend that had invited me to go bowling worked out as well. And I applied for a job immediately. I was like, she's here too? Yes, I am. I'm applying for a job. And then I just wanted to kind of have fun. And, you know, I got married so young, I wanted to kind of party and do all those things. And I remember even going out on dates while we were working together before we got together, because she had a boyfriend too at that time and had been together for a while through college. But they were on the rocks too and having some hard times. And we ended up going out together and you know, just spending more and more time together. And it was
fast.
It was like a blinding love. I had no say in it whatsoever. God was like, well, you met her now, so here she is. And I had no choice even.
Yeah.
It's kind of like being here on this podcast even, you know. I have these voices in my head saying, you know, you're not worthy, don't, you know, you're not ready, this kind of thing. Those same voices were in my ear when I met her, but I had no choice but to listen to what God wanted.
Yeah, we had a really fast meeting, and it was, I always say, we met at a time where we met, but it wasn't necessarily time for us to go full force.
Yeah.
And really the Lord was speaking, you can do this my way or you can do this your way. My way is wait and trust me. And I know your way is like, let's go, because I found the man of my dreams. We chose our way, and that came with some rocky roads and a little bit longer, kind of a wavy, but we always say the one thing that founded us together was before we got married, I overheard him. We met in a bar. We worked in a bar steak restaurant.
Yeah.
And I heard him talking to another couple that was getting ready to get married, and he said, "What is your relationship together with Jesus Christ?" And I was like, who is this boy at the bar talking about Jesus? And that really, it piqued my interest immediately. And that foundation has solidified our marriage. It's what's taken us through everything. And we didn't always listen to God's plan for us. We didn't always follow what God wanted us to do. We were wild. We were pregnant before we got married. We were not walking the way God wanted us to.
Stubborn. I like to say
stubborn. We were so stubborn, and also we hadn't been raised in the foundation of the church, and all we had was faith.
Yeah.
And I say all of it like it's nothing. Faith is huge, but that faith grew, and God redeemed our decisions. And now here we are 18 years later, and we're still together, and we're still glorifying God and learning more about things like that. So it was a journey for sure.
Yeah. Well, I love that now you can sit here and, you know, you can look back and you can see where it like flesh was leading versus like Holy Spirit leading.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And then I love how you mentioned the redemption of that. So if you don't mind, Jill, like just kind of diving more into that, like how did God redeem, like, because you said there were some bumpy and rocky roads, and whenever we want to do it our way, there typically is.
Yeah.
And so like, how did you guys navigate that, and how have you seen God redeem all that?
We navigated that by staying in church. We got our kids in church young. We started our marriage with 2 and then 1 on the way. And we were married in March. Kate was born in July. So we started our marriage with 3 kids. We didn't have that time of togetherness, and we didn't even have a honeymoon. It was just go, you're a family. And it was very important to us that our kids were close, that half brother, sister was not an issue, that we were a family together. We had a rocky relationship with his ex because of all of us. We were all immature and just, doing things according to our flesh, like you said. But we stayed in church. We were serving in church. We were our kids were there on Wednesday nights. We were on the weekends that we had the older 2, we were doing things in church. They were getting involved. And I think that despite the mess that was happening in our lives, that foundation is what kept us tethered and what kept us going. Like, it was always our foundation. If we disagreed everywhere else, we had this to come back to. And every Sunday, you know how it is in Sunday, you're like, yes, Sunday. And then Wednesday hits and you're like, what's Sunday? And you forget. But we just use that as our coming back to every single time. And it grew. We started leading small groups where we were serving. We became leaders in those serve roles, and then we got involved in the men's and women's ministries, and our kids were at church for 500 hours a week because we were serving. But it is what we needed, because
Yeah.
we needed that growth and they needed that stability. And it just became our family. It became what we used as our foundation instead of our past and our mistakes and our don't do this, do as I say, not as I do, kind of thing. And that's why we say the Bible is our foundation, because it really is a rock. It's what we came back to. That's the devotional we read this morning, actually. It was about him being the rock. So
I love that. Working with blended families so much, we talk about the foundation of your life on Jesus and having your marriage based on Jesus. And a lot of times people hear that and they're like, okay, I'm not developed enough to know what that means, or my relationship with Christ isn't as solidified as maybe you're telling me it should be.
Right.
So where do we start? And I made this comment to a group not too long ago. I said, listen, if you're struggling in your blended family, just get in the church.
Yes. Yeah.
And that means just going. Just get up on Sunday morning, find a church that's close, get dressed, and go.
Yeah.
That's where you start building relationship. That's where you start building foundation, is just by your presence amongst other believers, your presence amongst the Holy Spirit. That is where it starts. So no matter where you are in this journey, that is the greatest step forward that you can take. And I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Well, and it even made me think of what you said just a minute ago, John, about like how even just like coming here today and sharing your story, like, and meeting Jill, like God just, like I didn't have a choice, like the Holy Spirit just like led you, and he put you in this place. And I think oftentimes, like Scott was saying, like when we're just obedient to take that first step of what he's asking us to do, and if that's just stepping into a church, maybe of a church wound, or you come from a family that wasn't built on the foundation of the Bible or church, like just taking that first step of obedience to just go in that direction and then watch what God will do with that obedience and the doors that he'll open and the relationships in the community at the church, and the people and the men's groups and the women's groups. Like you probably didn't think like, oh, I'm going to find other people who are in our situation, or that, can be our errands in a season where we need that encouragement and uplifting. But I think it's just neat how time and time again, when you hear about couples who get in the church and that's their foundation, just the redeeming and the restoration and where God takes them. And so I think that's just a beautiful example to anyone who's listening or watching, that that relationship with Jesus is first, and then being in community and getting in the church.
Yeah, it's helpful because we came from very different backgrounds.
Yeah.
We always say we were like opposite sides of the track. It was like totally different. I have never had divorce in my family ever. And that goes back generations. And he has. And he grew up in a poorer side of the tracks than I did. And so we had different values. Everything was different except for the commonality we shared in Jesus and the faith base that we had. And that's why we always say our marriage was built on three things: really strong faith in God, an unbelievable just falling in love with each other, just head over heels, and then we had great sex.
Yeah.
And
Hey, yes. I'm glad that
it's
you
a foundation to marriage that, like, I know we talk about a lot. It's growing in people being able to talk about it more, but the intimacy that God provides within the marriage circle is so vital. But those three things are the things we had in common. And we didn't have common backgrounds. We didn't have common upbringings, but our faith and that rock in Jesus is it still keeps us going today.
Yeah, I love that.
It's always been a really big thing for me, is to build on it being the rock for blended families. I moved around a lot, and whenever I was young, probably 2 schools a year until I was in the 8th grade. And I was about 14 when I first found Jesus myself. And ever since then, he kind of just came alongside me, and I didn't always walk the right path next to him, but he was always there in all kinds of different circumstances of my life. So it was very important to me as we were getting married that we made sure we had our family in church, because no matter what happened in our life, if we had to move to be closer to to my other 2 children, or if work changed, things like that, we could always find a church that held our core values and beliefs that we could go back to, and that was our constant. Yeah. That was our rock for us, no matter what happened. So
I love it.
So good.
So you guys get married. You have two 13-year-olds, right? Or no? How old were your other kiddos when you got married?
When we got married, they were 5 and 2.
They were 5 and 2. You had one on the way. Yeah. So we're going to dive a little different and talk about parenting, because I know a lot of people, I've met a lot of blended families that have that dynamic. the older children to the younger children, like literally the full gamut of ages. And navigating parenting in those circumstances is challenging. So we're going to dive in and get your wisdom here. So what challenges did you face, and really how did you overcome them?
One of the biggest, and I think I can speak to everyone when I say this, is parenting in two different homes.
Yeah.
Co-parenting is such a big, broad topic.
Yeah.
And when you have a marriage that fell apart because of disagreement already, and you're already disagreeing and on different pages, I think it's very hard to continue on until you find a common ground. And again, even with his ex-wife, our common ground was Jesus. And I mean, we did our fair share of fighting and arguing, and we disagreed on many, many, many topics. But it always came back to honoring God and loving our children. And
That's good.
And respecting, it was very important to me that I respected their mom and that they knew I respected their mom. And I didn't always do that well. I was never perfect at it, but I never tried to replace their mom. They had a loving, good mom. And it was important to me that she knew I was never going to take that place. And that opened the door for us to communicate more. And so we did. We tried to keep things consistent. If there was something like a consequence at her house, we tried to keep it going at ours, and vice versa, so that they saw that there was, even though there wasn't always people getting along, that they weren't going to get the best of us. The kids were not ruling the roost. And that's hard because we did disagree on a lot of things, but we just kept trying. It wasn't always perfect, but we just kept trying year after year after year. I don't think we've brought this up, but they lived in Longview and we lived here. So we had a 2.5, 3 hour difference that we were traveling every weekend to exchange kids and drop, because it was a commitment we made for the kids to keep the consistency for them. So
That's good.
I love that.
Consistency was big.
Was there any, now that you look back, if you could take like the top, you talked about a few nuggets of wisdom, but I want to say like top 2 or 3 things that you learned and maybe how things are different today from when they started.
So in co-parenting with the ex, let's face it, sometimes you never overcome everything, right? There are some values and beliefs and just things that would be allowed in one home and not the other that never really change. But to have the respect for each other on both sides, to no matter if you agree with the rule that was broken or whatever at the other home, that you still uphold that and have the back of the other parent, to build on what Jill was saying. Also, just like she was saying too, to make sure that both family lives are important. Like never try to demean the other, or we're better or anything. My son came to live with us when he was 13. He had chose to come and live with us, and that was completely 100% his choice. I always let him know that he was welcome, obviously, and that I loved him and would love to have him. And my daughter as well. She chose to stay with her mom, so we went from driving every weekend or every other weekend to every weekend because we wanted he and her, his sister, to be able to spend at least every weekend together. So we made sacrifices like that. I think sacrifice is probably one of the top 5s. Like we all know there are sacrifices that are made when you get into a blended family.
You sacrifice your wants and how you think things should be. If you weren't blended, I would be doing it this way all the time. But now I've got to make this concession for the kids, because I mean, you can ask our 17-year-old daughter. She was the one that we had when we got married, and she would sit in the car and go on these trips with us to go pick up her brother and sister. And she'd be like, "Do I have to go?" And it was hard on them too, our other 2 daughters, because they were involved in those drives and they didn't really have to be. But this is our family. We're a blended family. Your brother and sister are just as important, and we're in this together. So get in the car and we'll turn on a movie and so sacrifice was big, and for his ex-wife as well. We were all making concessions for the kids, and now we've got these 2 are grown, 24 and 21 now, and
that's when you overcome it, by the way.
Beautiful. It's just like our 21-year-old daughter just got married last year, and to see our families, and it wasn't just his and hers. You know, we were a family, and then her husband has his family, but we were a family together. And it was beautiful to see God redeem all the past hurts, all the fights and arguments and mean texts and things that happened. God redeemed that, and this beautiful family came together as one. Aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, grandmothers, and even our kids call their grandmother their grandma name, because that's how close we have developed our family. And it's been awesome to see.
Well, and I love that when you were talking about the mutual respect and honor, because I know that there's a lot of people watching and listening who have high conflict ex-spouses, whatever you want to label it, do not have a good co-parenting relationship, and are just stuck on, that's not going to happen because of the way they treat me, what they call me, this, and that. And I just want to say to that, it's that regardless of what other people say or do, the Bible tells us to love our neighbor regardless, and to forgive them. And so when you talk about, Jill, you know, y'all's life standard is the Bible. And when we can, again, be obedient to what God's word says, regardless of what people are saying or doing, that obedience turns into blessings. And watching how God, like you said, like co-parenting was hard, but now you're in this season where like there's this harvest of all of our obedience and all of the hard stuff that we went through. God has redeemed all of that because of our faithfulness in his word and in him. And like you said, like your family, like how far you guys have come from that. And so I think it's just a testament of, one, God's faithfulness, but two, that when we're obedient to what his word says, he's going to see us through. And it may not be in the way that we expect or that we think it's going to be. And it sure as heck is never on our timing, because it's always on his. And, you know, and we say oftentimes with blended families, you see the fruit a lot later than you do immediately. And so, but just holding on to that anchor and that hope of, you know what, there is a day. There's going to be a day. And just watching God bring that to fruition. I mean, that is so cool.
It is. And I'm grateful. I have, you know, when we talk to other blended families and people that are where we were at that time, when they're struggling with their kids, and, you know, my son's not talking to me now because he's talking to whoever, and I say, just keep at it. Don't stop, because that is one thing we did not stop pouring into our kids. We did not stop going to church. We did not stop serving. We did not stop. We did not let our mess stop us from pursuing God. And like John said, the voices of you're not worthy, like I can't tell you how many times we wanted to hide our mess because of shame and guilt, and it didn't look pretty, and we hadn't seen that victorious side yet. But we just still talked, and we talked, and more people would say, I'm in that position too. And I think that learning that God redeems us through relationships and through godly relationships. We received a lot of counseling ourselves from people at church that would help us, and just being open to share and share your story and say, just keep going and be consistent in your pursuit of the Lord, and be persistent in going after your children's hearts and protecting and guarding their hearts, because it is, I mean, you're changing generational things when you do that. And we have a daughter that's in a beautiful marriage now, and the thought of divorce is not an issue, and that's redemption.
And there's so much power in our testimonies and in hope. And so whenever you have blended families who are in those beginning to blend seasons, you know, and you guys have been married 18 years, and you're kind of, you know, you've got adult children, you still have got the littles, and you've seen the other side of it, or you're experiencing the other side of it. Sharing that with people who are in it and in the muck of it, just like, we don't see a way, and hearing someone's testimony of, hey guys, like it's there, just hold on and keep pursuing. I love that, because I think that's what community is all about. That's what being in relationship is all about. And how we can be that encouragement and hope for others.
Absolutely.
Love it. Well, the nuggets of wisdom are outpouring here. So I hope if you're listening, you're like, man, this is so encouraging. So we're kind of coming to kind of a close, but we always ask a couple of questions before we close. So one is, what advice would you give a blended family?
There's so much. First of all, stay plugged in, like you said. Get plugged into your church and stay plugged in. And if that's in a small group, or just getting to church on Sundays, or we used to blast praise music in our house and make breakfast. Like, just stay plugged into God, and He will sustain you. And it may not feel like it, but He will be there. So I would say that is number one, is stay plugged in.
And then stay close no matter what. You know, make it a priority, even if you have to have a separate home with the ex-spouse. Make it a priority to have them be with their parent when it's at their time, and vice versa. I think allowing the children to say, I don't want to go this weekend because I have a party, a birthday party or something to go to. That was always a really big thing for me.
You're going.
Because that just strengthens that family bond even more, even if they're mad. You know, there's been a lot of times when I wanted to be a friend for my kids to look cooler because they're going to be leaving to go to their mom, and they're going to be mad at me all, you know, until I see them again. And I would have that fear. But I always made sure that we held true to what we wanted them to know was important. And no matter if they came and they were mad all weekend, then we would force a hike down their throat or something.
Get outside.
That's awesome.
That's really important, I think.
Love that.
Love that. Well, you guys, our final question, and we ask this from everyone, all of the people that we interview, but Blended Kingdom Families, it's the name of the ministry. What is a Blended Kingdom family to you?
I think keeping God at the center no matter what. You've got two different people, two different homes doing different things, and that's okay. But if you keep God at the center, it's going to just carry you through and give you a beautiful relationship with your children, with your ex-spouse. We are a living testimony of that. And it's, you know, we started out rocky, but we all collectively made God the center, and it's like an uphill climb. You know, we did that, and now we're looking back, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So Blended Kingdom Families, just keep God at the center always.
Love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, very end, we're coming to a close.
Yeah.
So John and Jill, tell us where people can find you guys, where they can get more information about y'all, the Teacher Be Still, all the things.
Yes.
So at Teacher Be Still on all platforms, you can find more about Teacher Be Still. And then at Jill Corey Miller, you can find stuff about our family. He's not as big on social media as I am.
It's all right. I'm not either.
At all.
I'm not either.
He's like, you're doing
Yeah.
great. So at Jill Corey Miller, you can find more about us.
Teacher Be Still. I want to just touch this real quick.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Teacher Be Still. So,
Yeah.
'cause somebody who just heard that went, wait, what is that?
What is that?
Yeah.
So Teacher Be Still is a ministry for educators.
Yes.
And we pour
They
into
need that, by the way.
yes,
Man, a lot
so
they need
much.
that.
And we actually started in 2019. We had a large conference for teachers. God has developed that, and now we have ambassadors all over the country. And we actually pour into ambassadors. We provide them with devotionals and materials, and they host small groups on their campuses.
Oh,
so
that's so
we've
cool.
got public schools, private schools, all kinds of schools. Actually, I say country, but we have some in Africa as well. So
Hey. Oh, I
love
we're
that.
all over the place. We equip teachers to join in community together on their campuses and be the light of Jesus. So that's what Teacher Be Still is all about. We actually started, there was a blended family situation on my campus that I was unaware of, and a woman going through a really awful divorce. And I thought, how come I don't know that she's in this situation? I need to be opening my heart to my colleagues.
Yeah.
And that really is what spurred Teacher Be Still, is I want teachers to be more in community together so they can be in community with the families they serve and the students they serve, and provide them with resources to do that. So
I love that.
that's what it's all about.
Well, if you're a teacher or you know one, make sure that you get them that resource and
Yes.
they have that available to them.
Yeah.
Guys, we're coming to a close. We want to make sure that we highlight the book Blended and Redeemed, also that is available now. You can go on Amazon. This is Vanessa and I's first book
Yes.
that we wrote.
Yep.
And it's titled The Go-To Field Guide for the Modern Step Family. It's a great resource, a lot of great nuggets of information in here. So if you haven't already, please pick up a copy.
Yes.
Yes.
Guys, thank y'all so much for tuning in today. We have so enjoyed having John and Jill on the podcast today. Hope you guys have enjoyed it too. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Be blessed in all that you do.
Hey guys, so glad you were here with us today, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
And you can find more resources from Blended Kingdom Families at blendedkingdomfamilies.com. Join us again next time as we hang out with more amazing podcast guests. And remember, nothing will be impossible with God.